It doesn't matter which bit.ly link you click on, honestly, but I will tell you that each Jamboard is limited to 50 participants. So that's why I made 3 different ones. So if you could take a minute right now and click on one of those links, or go ahead and type it in. If you're looking at your own version of this slideshow, you'll be able to click on it. If you're just looking at mine, you'll want to type that in. Again, it is case sensitive. So WBDI Jam 1, 2, or 3. And what that's going to do is that's going to take you to a Jamboard. And this is what a Jamboard looks like. It's pretty simple. It's just a whiteboard, you know. What I like about it is its simplicity. There's not that many options, and that kind of makes it nice. So the easiest thing to do is to, over on the left-hand side where it says sticky note, click on the sticky note, and that's going to give you a new sticky. You can pick your color, and that's where you can go ahead and write. And what I'm asking you to do on the first page of your Jamboard is to simply introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, where you're from, whatever you would like. If you want to add an image, there's an add image button over there on the left. You can use that, or you can copy paste one from the web. You can also use the pen feature and draw if you would like to do that. So if you could take a minute on that first slide and go ahead and introduce yourself. Once you've introduced yourself, your next step, we're going to go over to slide number 2. So you'll see I just used those little arrows up at the top to bring me to the different frames. And I want you to think about a rose, something over the last few months or even this whole school year in regards to technology, a highlight, a success, a win, something positive that happened with technology in your school year. So grab a sticky note on that second frame and put in something positive. Put in a rose that you can think about. And then we'll also go to slide 3, and I want you to think about a thorn, a challenge that you experience with technology, or something that you want more support with for next year. Don't go on to slide 4 next. We'll go there at the very, very end of the presentation. But just take a minute right now and see if you can go ahead and try some of those Jamboards. And let's see, hopefully nobody's having any troubles getting in. There's the links again, just in case. So the bit.ly/WBDI jam 1, 2, or 3. Let's take a look. One of the nice things about doing it this way is creating several is you can bounce back and forth. There's no reason that you have to stay in just one. You can go to the different jams and kind of see what people are saying, see what they're doing. Awesome. So I'm looking here in number 2. We've got people from Florida, Erie, PA, California. I love it. Oh, and we're seeing some good roses too. Discovered Flipgrid. Yes, we're going to start talking about Flipgrid in a little while too. Google Smart Music, very nice. And Bitmoji classrooms. Yes, I love them. Okay, yes, I agree. Whoever says Zoom ban sucks. Unfortunately, that is very, very true. So if you're thinking about the Jamboard with your students, I would use this. Honestly, I'd probably use it just like I did with you at the beginning of the school year. Everybody introduce yourself, and we could go through a roses and a thorns, and then the buds that we'll get to later. If you're thinking about a reflection after a performance, you could do something where on the first slide you have the kids, say their names and what instruments they played. On the second slide, ask them to insert a picture that reflects their summer vacation. Just doing things to get kids working together. That's one of the hardest things right now in distance learning, is that aspect of community that we're lacking. That's something that I know that I always worked so hard to build in my band room, is that sense of a community, that sense of family, and that togetherness, the importance that we were one group and we worked together all the time. And I think you can use some of this tech to help the kids establish that. So whether it's something where they're putting a Bitmoji up on a Google Slides or a Jamboard, or you're having them work together on something collaborative, any way that you can get these kids to remember that they're not isolated, that they're not alone, and that we're all in this together, I think is going to be a really strong thing. So keep those Jamboards handy. I love it. People are even putting images in. This is great. Keep your Jamboard handy, as I said. Feel free to continue adding to it. And as we go through the conference, like I said, when we get to, this panel, when we get to the end, I'm going to ask you to go on to that 4th slide, and hopefully there'll be a bud that you can add, something that you are excited about, something that has blossomed, an idea or something like So as far as the Google stuff goes, there's lots and lots and lots of resources out there. The Google Teacher Center is fabulous. They have training resources, product guides, there's even certifications. I started in 2016 with the, they call the Google Level 1 certification, and it's a lot of training. It's a lot of free resources to learn about it. And then you pay $10 to take a test and get a little badge that says you are Google certified. And if you're crazy enough, you can continue going through the Level 2 certification and trainer and innovator and all that. So I tried to put some resources up here. I'm always available. I really enjoy figuring out how to take this tech and make it work for what we do as band directors. So please reach out at any time if I can be of assistance for that. So with that, we're going to move on. I'm going to invite Shamika in to join us to talk about the Chrome Music Lab.
Okay, everyone. The Chrome Music Lab is free online, and there's just a lot of different games that students can play, and you can check all those out for yourself. But the one that I want to talk about today is the song maker within Chrome Music Lab. So I'm not sure. I'd like to explain it by sharing my screen. Is that okay? It should only take like a few
You can
seconds.
share your screen. Yes, you can just go ahead and share it.
Ah, okay, I see. Here we go. Share. So, can you guys see the song maker screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So, this initially looks like a children's game or something because of the colors that they use. You may have seen pictures online of different songs that people make, but this is really much more powerful than that. And all the power is in the settings, okay? So you can create a composition up to about, I think, 17 bars if you want, 16 bars. And then beats per bar, you can go up to 7/4 if you want, or other time signatures, because you can split the beat. You can subdivide to 16th notes here, okay? And you can also change the options. You can write in a major scale, pentatonic scale, or chromatic scale. So as soon as you start with that chromatic scale, you can pretty much write any music that you want to. And then you can start on any pitch as well. And then you have up to 3 octaves to work with. So just so you can see quickly, I'm going to put in 3 bars and just maybe show you what it looks like in 2/4 and divide it into 8th notes so you can get a sense of what it looks like, okay? So hopefully you can see there the measures. We're in 2/4 here, and it also will show you the different measures because they're shaded. The colors are shaded. And then I'll change it one more time so you can see the 16th notes. So this is the first beat here of the measure. So this is beat 1. So you have 1 E and A there. And then here, this next one is 2 E and A, obviously, you know. So I don't have to explain all that to you guys. I'm sure you'll figure it out. But I wanted to just really explain how the settings work. Now, you can enter pitch by just clicking anywhere, you know. And sometimes kids, when they're on here, they just make faces. But you really can teach composition with this because it's kind of set up like a DAW, like a digital audio workstation. And you can also enter the pitches by using the arrows here. And the really cool part here is that you can use the microphone to enter pitch. So you could sing the pitch and it'll pick it up and enter it in. Even if you have limited it to the pentatonic scale, it will just basically estimate the pitch where it's supposed to be and enter it for you. You can also use instruments to enter pitch. You know, so if a student really has ideas that they're thinking of and that they want to compose with, they can use the microphone to get those things out. And across the bottom is where the rhythm is, across the bottom, so you can put those in. And then at the top, you have all the harmonic information that you need to enter. Okay, so I want to just show you just one that I made really quickly, if I can get to it because there's little banners in the way. But anyway, at the top, here it is. I'll just show you. So I entered this in 3/4, And I just put a scale in so people can hear that. And then I put in some chords here, okay? I'm not sure. Could you guys hear that? Hopefully you could hear it.
Yes, that
But
was awesome.
okay, cool. So now how I use this with my students, okay? So you can see that this really had a different type of feel to it. So if I wanted my students to still write with this rhythm, what I would do is just delete the melody, okay? And then here where it says, so I need to just make one change. If you can see at the bottom, it says save, okay? So what I do with my students, I copy the link, and then in the chat, I'll just email this, if I can figure out where the chat is now. Maybe I'll do stop sharing. But the way that I use this all the time to teach composition is, and to save time, I email the students a template from this song maker that I've set up already. So if we're doing something in 3/4 time, I will set that out already. When I'm working with orchestra students, if I'm working with the beginning students, I'll make sure that we're in D major, okay, and maybe even limited to the pentatonic scale, depending on the group of students. So again, I just make a template. So even if we're going to try to do really short something in ABA form or just whatever, I send them. So like I just sent this to you, so you can change it as well and already have a way to basically save time and create a safe space for them to start composing. So I was trying to go a little fast, but there is hopefully, I couldn't figure out how to get my video into the Google slide to make it work, but there's a tutorial that I made for my students which shows you how to do everything exactly. And at the end it says to email Isaac, send it. That's like someone else. Don't email Isaac. I didn't have time to cut that part off the video. But anyway, if you have any questions, just let me know. You can type them in, I think, and I can try to answer them during the presentation if you have any questions about the Songmaker.
Awesome. I did get to put your tutorial video in the slides, so anybody who has the slides
Thank
will
you.
have access to that. Yeah, but yeah, good to note not to email Isaac. Or I'm going to share my screen one more time and just show you one other thing that's within that Chrome Music Lab. So the Chrome Music Lab is a whole series of experiments, and the one that Shamika just shared is easily the most robust, like because you have so many options, and you can also you can save, which none of the other ones you can save. So that's why that's really the best one. But the other one I'm going to show you right now is the Rhythm Maker. So the link to the Chrome Music Lab is in the slides. You can get that, or you can just type it in the Google search bar. But the second one here is the Rhythm Maker. And I love this for just really basic rhythm loops, okay? So it's just like the other one. You're simply going to click. And as you click, things are added. So I just added a couple little random things. When I hit the play button, it's going to loop that rhythm that I just made. Okay. And it's that simple. Just by clicking the little dots, you're going to add those different rhythms. Now, we can do this in 3. We've got an option to do it in 4. And obviously now that the little dudes and their instruments have changed, you know, our sounds have actually changed too. We can do this in 5, and you also have the option for 6. So this is something that anybody could do. You could have a kindergartner playing around with this. What I'll use it for with my band kids is honestly just to have a looping rhythm. If we're doing some warm-ups that need something else to go with it, I'll put this up on the smart board, have a kid come up, put up a rhythm, and we might just echo rhythms over it, or we might do long tones over it. We'll do something just to make it a little bit more interesting. You can also encourage kids to create their own little rhythm loops to play along with songs out of their method book, or to play along just to give it a little bit more interest. So the Chrome Music Lab's a lot of fun. There's so many different experiments. You might want to give yourself a lot of time before you go into it, because you can get lost. It's definitely a rabbit hole, but I think it's something that as music teachers, we can get have a lot of use from and have a lot of interest. So that's the Chrome Music Lab. And I'm going to stop sharing now and turn it over to Anoa, who's going to talk to us.
Hello, everybody. Just so thankful to be a part of this panel tonight and work with these wonderful women. And I wanted to share with you all what I've done this time is in distance learning with regards to teaching music in a non-performance classroom. So I'm going to go ahead and share my slides here with you all today and get started with that. Okay, so I'm hoping that you all can see that. And what I'm going to do is just kind of go through what I've come up with here. So it's going to just take me 1 second. Okay. So what happened with my situation even at a performance arts high school is that our performance classes were kind of went out the window. And as a result, we had to kind of pare down what we were going to be teaching because we do have a lot of other classes that we do offer. And so we thought about what would be the most easiest to share with the kids in a virtual space. So we went with music theory and we went with music literature, which is something that I am usually teaching during the year. So this was very interesting because I did find ways in which I felt like it could apply to some technologies and to some things that we could do outside of the band room and maybe go into different areas of learning. So so I wanted to show you some things of that nature. For us in this kind of situation, as Shamika was sharing and Teresa was sharing, we can use things as far as composition, and we can access areas of learning that probably we don't get the chance to get into. And so I felt like that was a great kind of way into this learning environment. So this is a time to explore. What are we missing in the curriculum, which was something what I was just talking about. What are the areas that we are neglecting on a daily basis that we can get into? Can we explore composers and music of composers or their listening? Is there some listening that we don't get a chance to do during the school year that we really want to get to? Are there listening logs? Are there journals? Are there discussions that we can have? This can be teacher derived or of course student-led learning as well. Are there some skills, some real life skills that we can provide as well? The creation of repertoire lists, which is something that we did, and we allow the kids to sort of go back into their high school years and talk about what they performed in solo and ensemble, what did they do in their band and orchestra classes, etc. So getting a head start on that, writing biographies, their own biographies, and helping them to define who they are as artists. And lastly, working on writing about music, rather. So we know that we have to learn how to be analytical in the study of music when we take music history in college and beyond. And this is an opportunity for us to do so, to start to give us those skills to write about music in the classroom. So let me see. The technologies that I did use are Google Classroom. I use Google Meet. And Google Chrome tab for Google Meet, of course. This Googling is really hard to pronounce sometimes. But anyway, and then Google Suite. Google Suite I used in various ways, but one of the ways I love to use the entire suite is to get the calendar going and to make connection with students using the appointment setting to get some like coach classes and things like that. So that was really a nice way to get into all of this. So I wanted to share with you guys some tips and hacks with Google Classroom. They're not groundbreaking, but if you are unfamiliar with Google, this will definitely help you out here as far as some hacks with Google Classroom and Google Meet. So I'll just play this now. Hey, oops. So we're gonna let's try that again. Hey, so we're gonna get started with all the hacks that I've come up with for this session. And for me, hack number one is how to create an assignment that you can use for several classes. So what you're going to do is go into your classwork. If you're using Google Classroom, of course, you are going to create an assignment. I have already done so, but you can create one here. Okay, let's do that now. And you're going to give it any type of title that you'd like. Now, once you've done that, let's call it assignment number one. And you're going to, then create this for multiple classes, for instance. So that's a really key tip for me, because you could then save some time and in terms of thinking about numerous kinds of assignments to give for your multiple classes if you have something like that. And so what you'll do is you'll go into over here to the for area, and then you'll just assign and click on the down menu who you'd like to assign this to, okay? So this is a really wonderful feature that you can use in the classroom. Now, the next hack, number two, is the use of rubrics, which are great, of course, assessment tools that give explicit understanding of what the criteria is to be judging a student's work. And so here you can create a rubric within Google Classroom, which is very useful. You'll just go ahead and click on Create Rubric. You will then create your criterion, and say your criterion would be, the first one would be content. You would then tell us what that means, content, surrounding content, and then you would go ahead and give a point level to that. So 5 points, if they get 5 points, that means maybe it's excellent, perfect, etc. And then what is an excellent? And you would give that description. And then you'll just keep adding on to each level. What is good work? Or whatever descriptor you would like to use. And then you can then add the criteria for this. The criteria, the second criteria could be the composition, the grammar, and then it can go on and on and on. And so it would be similar to a regular rubric, except everything is sort of streamlined into this. Once you've saved everything, you can then go into maybe another of your work there. You can show specifically to the student what they need to do in the future and what they've done on that. So you can go ahead, open the student's work, and then you'll see over here in the right-hand corner what they need to do. So for the composition, I gave this young lady a 4, and I do have permission to use her work. And you can give her 4 out of 5, and then she'll look and see what that means. And then for the next, she could get 4 points, and you would see what that meant, merging, etc. So this is a useful tool that is totally encapsulated in Google Chrome, a great tool. The next thing I want to show you, hack number next, is Google Meets. Hi, everybody. So in Google Meets, you can play audio. And the way that I would suggest doing audio, for example, if you wanted to do a listening journal, or if you wanted to show some music to some kids in the Google Meet classroom, go ahead to Present Now. You're going to go ahead to this option, a Chrome tab, and you'll find your link. In this case, I'm going to show you a little bit of Timary's work here, okay? This is the best way, guys. Listen up. And so those are the hacks that I have for you all. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will close this out now. Okay, so with all of those different things that you with all those things that you just saw, I wanted to just emphasize that there is a benefit to going outside of your normal, I guess, band world things. And you could there are many implications of using this in the classroom. I think there could be more scenarios besides doing maybe sectionals and things of that nature. So think about ways in which you can incorporate different modalities in your work. I did want to say that with the listening and Google Meets, if you play it the normal way, like maybe through just sharing your window, the listening experience in the video is going to be a little bit splotchy. So I would encourage you to look at that Chrome tab to do that. So that's a little bit of what I have there. There are some resources in my document as well. So please go ahead and check those out. Those are some tutorials for you to go deeper. Thank you. And I think.
Thank you, Anoa.
Sure.
And then Julia, we'll have you talking about sectionals in a virtual space.
Sure, thank you. I want to thank WBDI for allowing me to be part of this roundtable discussion. I too am figuring it out alongside you guys as educators, and how to navigate this whole online teaching thing. So I came up with something that I think can help not only with the ensemble portion. It's kind of nice that I went right after Noah where she was talking about non-performing classes. This is for your performance classes. Let me see if I can share my screen. All right. Can you guys see my screen? I think you can.
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. Okay, so let me get to present here. Like I was saying just a little bit before, a little bit ago, it was relatively easy to move my non-performing classes online, and the resources that Noah was saying are things that I was using, and they're fabulous, so make sure that you check those out. But I was a little concerned about my performance classes. And one of the things that was happening right about the time of COVID first exploding in our country was marching band audition time for my university. My percussion instructor, Alex Smith, got together with his section, had successful auditions, and then put together this sectional idea using Zoom. Now, my university is a Zoom school. I know some universities are not Zoom schools. I know some schools use web teams or Microsoft Teams and Google Meet. But as far as I can tell, a lot of these platforms also have similar things like breakout rooms. But for the purposes of what I do, we used Zoom breakout rooms. So one of the things that I loved about running a sectional in Zoom using the breakout rooms is the first thing I could do is meet with my students, kind of like how we're meeting here all together in one room. And then I could assign my students to their certain section rooms. So flutes had a room, saxophones, clarinets, all of the above. And from there, I think my favorite thing about this is I was worried about my student leadership being able to still have an opportunity to use their leadership skills and practice their leadership skills. I'm also concerned, part of what I do here is help pre-service teachers in going into their student teaching semester. So I was concerned about them getting a lot of field experience when we're all in the virtual space. So I would have my section leaders or my student leaders, or perhaps my students going into their student teaching semester, run a breakout room as far as being the lead for a sectional. So let's get into exactly what this looked like. I always like to say this is the best thing we can do right now. If you're a little bit like me, I get a little defeated sometimes about I'm not giving my students enough for online teaching. I'm not giving them exactly what they get face to face. And once I got over that and said this is in no way, shape, or form a replacement for face to face, it was sort of revealing, and I like released a lot of stress from my day to day. This is not going to be a replacement. This is no way going to offer exactly what you can get from a face to face synchronous sort of type of instruction. But for now, it's the best we can do. And I think this is also something that when we hopefully get back to normal one day, that this is something I can implement. Maybe our students are on spring break, or maybe they're through the summer and they're trying to get back into shape for marching band or even for concert band, and they come back and maybe they run a sectional on Zoom using our breakout rooms. I alluded to this a little bit before. Student leadership and pre-service teachers, this is a great opportunity for them to still get those opportunities to lead, to teach, sort of a field experience without being in the field, so to speak, but this might be something that our field adopts from now on. So this is really good experience for them to have. One thing I always like to think about too is my team that I have here as part of my band staff. We have adjuncts, we have clinicians that we bring in to work with our students. We're fortunate enough to be able to do that. We have them come in every year and they're a part of our family. And one of the things I'm concerned about with all of the budget cuts that we're all going to be facing because of this pandemic is making sure that they have an opportunity to still work and to still get paid. My front ensemble person just had a baby. So I want to make sure that we're still taking care of them. So in order to justify payment for them to do work still, this could be a way, running sectionals through Zoom, being in charge of one of those Zoom breakout rooms for sectionals to be paid for their work, justifying to my administration that we still need to help them out. So let's talk about how we actually set this up, okay? The first thing, because I'm going to give you resources at the end of this that show you exactly how to set up a Zoom breakout room, how to assign students, I'm going to give you 3 videos that helped me figure it out. But I don't think that's the hardest part of this. I think the hardest part is setting up the workflow. And the biggest thing is line up your objectives. At the end of this, what do you want your students to know? And create an agenda for these objectives. And this is the big one, smaller is better, because we all have discovered that online teaching takes longer if you're not used to it. I'm not used to it, so it's baby steps for me. Have your students and leadership help in the decision-making process. There's been a lot of talk about that during this conference, and I think that's a wonderful thing. To ask your flute students, I do not play flute, so maybe ask my section leader, Damon, what part of this song is going to be particularly difficult technique-wise that we probably need to focus on? And he can just go right through and he could figure it out, and that might be one of the objectives that we focus on for that section. And then also make sure that everyone who is going to be leading some sort of portion of this sectional has some sort of training from you. Even at the college level, I know that my students are not going to be able to do, think about how much it's been a task for some of us as educators who are experienced to learn online teaching. I don't think for a second that my students are going to be any better at, maybe not so much the technology part, but the teaching part. So making sure that they're being trained if they are going to help you with the Zoom sectional. So let's get into, again, I think this is one of the more important parts of using this Zoom platform for sectionals is the agenda. I always give out a week agenda, which includes separate days, and then also a separate module agenda for a section. So flutes will get an agenda just for what flutes need to do. But everybody in the woodwind section will get the entire week agenda as well as what they specifically have to do throughout the week. So this is an example of a full week agenda. I meet with them at the beginning just for a quick brief moments. Team, this is what our task is supposed to do. Then I'm going to put them into their breakout rooms, and then we have our student leaders lead it. And then they have a certain amount of time before they wrap it up, and we all meet back together as a team at the end of that day. Now, these times are approximate. We're still exploring this technique at my university. We found that it takes minimum an hour for our students to be in a sectional, which is kind of like what we do face-to-face as well. They need time, and I always build a little bit of extra buffer time so that they have time to get through the online portion of everything. This is an example of what modules would look like. So shout out to Kevin Day, Rocket Ship. Fabulous piece. If you don't know his music, get with his music. My students had so much fun playing this piece last year. But this is an example of how bite-sized these modules should be. So if you look at flutes and you see measures 56 to 71, that's not a lot of music, but that's a particularly technical part in this piece of music. They also have another objective, measures 83 through 87, and then all at quarter note, some sort of range of tempo. So we're being very specific on what our goal is for this day. Even more specific is the specific agenda for the sections as just the sections by themselves. And this is really the bread and butter of how this can work. One of my section leaders, her name is Phoebe. I have Phoebe and David, and Phoebe is one of them. But she would get onto in the breakout room and she'd say, okay, our objective today is measures 56 through 71, quarter note equals 132. She would say, I'm going to model. Everybody else listen to what I'm modeling. Make sure you're on mute. And then she models. Then Phoebe says, okay, I'm going to model one more time and make sure that you're still on mute, but play along with me so that they get a rep of the objective. And then she does it one more time. And then Phoebe could break it down, perhaps the first phrase plus one note, and then the second phrase plus one note. And say they're working on the first phrase. Phoebe models it, breaks it down, and everybody else plays along but muted. Once Phoebe is done with that portion, we have a row, down the row, if you will, of who is going to play next. And the students are going to get this agenda prior, so it's not going to be an I gotcha moment. It's going to be I know where I am in the lineup. Emily, your turn. Go ahead and unmute and play the first part of the phrase plus one note. Everybody else still stay on mute and play along with Emily. Emily plays, everybody plays along but on mute. Phoebe is listening and gives some feedback afterwards. And remember, we have gone through and we've trained our leaders to give really succinct teaching. I call it bite-sized teaching, but with really good ingredients. And this is just really good teaching moments. They do that, they go through the line. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about just briefly, because I know I only have a few minutes left, is what do you do if a student is not comfortable playing for their peers? And what do you do if you have a student who's not comfortable playing even for you one-on-one? They're comfortable playing within the section. Well, you as the teacher could have a separate breakout room one-on-one with that student who's not fully comfortable. Or you can have that student perhaps record themselves and send it in if they don't want to be put on the spot. There are different ways to go about that, but you do need to know that there's going to, and you know this, there's going to be some students who might not be comfortable on down the row. That's really, really tough for some students. So I like to be cognizant of that. I do have some students that I just work with them one-on-one, and I don't press to go down the row. Here are those 3 videos that helped me figure out how to activate breakout rooms within Zoom. It's in your advanced settings, and you activate breakout rooms. And then once they're activated, on the bottom part of the bar of your Zoom screen, there will be 4 squares. And this is exactly what we did last night during happy hour, and we're going to do that again. I believe tonight we're also doing that again. And once you have those populated, once you've selected that in your settings, you can go ahead and pre-assign your students. You could change the name of the breakout rooms to be flute room. You can ask your kids what clarinets, what do you want to name your room? Crazy clarinet room. So you could do cute things like that. Again, having ownership, having your students take ownership and participate in this whole process. The last slide I have is just a simple click here for my handout, which we're going to have. This is already posted for the Google Slides for this whole presentation. And here's my email address. If you want to contact me with more questions, absolutely reach out, here to help. I will say this, what do you do if you don't have student leaders? This might be a great time to think about that student that's always hanging out after school saying, can I hang out? Can I clean the library? Do you need help with something? This might be something, even if it means having them help set up the breakout rooms together and title them. This might be something where that student who's always hanging out to help because they want to be, that's the way they participate. This is a way that that student can still get that. I think at the core of what we do, it's always the students. And when I asked my university students, this will be the last thing I say, I promise. When I asked my university students what they miss most about everything being online, music wasn't the first thing. It was the social aspect of being with their friends and being around and making music together. And while we might not have that, we could do something like this as sort of a substitute. Again, not a replacement, but for now, sort of a substitute. And that's all I got. So hope you guys, if you have any questions, I'll check out the Q&A and sort of answer them as we go, because we do have to move on to the next person. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia. We'll move on now to Emily Talley, who'll be talking about a cappella.
Yep, so I actually pre-recorded this because of the screen mirroring program that I'm using. So I'm just going to share this with you guys and go from there. Hi, my name is Emily Talley, and I'm going to be talking to you briefly about the benefits of using Acapella app in your music classroom. So I started using Acapella at the beginning of the pandemic when we were initially sent home just for my own personal use. And I had a lot of fun using it and learning different pieces of music and learning all the parts and putting them together. And so I decided to reach out to the company and talk to them about getting a subscription for my concert band class. And I'll talk a little bit about that more towards the end and how that worked out. But I wanted to just talk about ways that you could utilize this in your classroom. If you are teaching one-on-one lessons, I think this is a great way to continue duets and that small chamber pieces. I have a student in North Carolina that I teach while I'm in Ohio. I would upload my part and then I am able to extract the video and send him the link to it. And he signs on as a collaborator to the app, and he goes in and adds his part on top of mine. And what I really find to be beneficial about this is he is still reacting to what I've played. So even though we're not sitting side by side and it's not completely live, he has to use his ears to play along with what I have already recorded and to try to play in tone and in time and in tune with what I've already played. And of course, is what we want from our students. And so I find that to be really, really helpful. Obviously, we can't do duets on Zoom or Teams. And so this is kind of the alternative to that, I think, for me. You can also use it for sectionals. I have found it to be helpful for sectionals. I wouldn't recommend using it for an entire piece of music. There's a 10-minute time limit. But when you record, you have to do it in one take. And so if you have a large chunk of music, it makes it a little bit more difficult and frustrating for the student because if they make a mistake, they're going to want to go back and redo the entire thing, which can be a very lengthy process, as I've found in my own playing. So if you take perhaps a section that you might be working on together, have your best players start with their video so that the other students can emulate their tone and time and articulation. And then one by one, they'll go in and add their parts. Then once they have the video finished, they are able to share it and give each other feedback on what they hear. A lot of times kids are hesitant to give feedback because they don't want to speak directly to the people who are playing. They feel a little bit standoffish about it. With this app, you're not able to tell, who's playing what part. And so they're a little bit more apt to offering that feedback and providing some insight into what they are hearing, which I think is great. And it gives them an opportunity to learn how to start talking about these things, which I think is excellent. Then you can also use it for, if you wanted to do a virtual ensemble, there is a limit of recordings that you can put in of 9, but there's actually a way around that. And I'm going to show you just that one part of the app in just a second. But I wouldn't recommend using it to do your virtual ensembles, as the method in doing so on this particular app could be very more so time consuming than say Final Cut Pro or whatnot. And then you run into issues like balance and whatnot with this app. So I would save that for other recording devices and programs. And you'll hear more about that later tonight, actually. But I just want to show you real quick. So this is what the app looks like once you sign in. And it's cool that the students are able to see other people's works and what they've done and kind of get inspired, which is really nice. But at the bottom, you will see these mics here under the watermark. If you click that, you're able to start a new recording, which is where if you were going to do your own video, you could do it here. Or if you had somebody who you were collaborating with, doing a duet, trio, quartet with, you could join their collaboration. This I've already started. Because my internet is so slow, I've already imported a video, but so I'm gonna click on this and show you what it's gonna look like. So normally when you initially start a video, down here, actually let me, oh, I keep clicking on my screen, it's on my phone. So normally down at the very bottom here, you're gonna see a little videotape roll. You don't see it now because I've already imported my video. You can only import one video per recording. And so that's what you see here. This is, I've already done a 9-tile video and imported that. And so now it's gonna let me record all the other tiles. So you see, I'm already at what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 16 tiles here. Now, like I said, it only lets you import one video, so I couldn't do, you know, a 9-tile in each one of those blocks. But once I finished all the remaining blocks in this video, I could export that video and then import it into another video, which is why I say it's so time consuming, is you would end up with several different links for collaborations. And but if you have a sectional, say you have 17 or so in your section and you want to use that, it does provide the opportunity to do that, which is great. Some other things that I think would be extremely beneficial to do with this, and we didn't have the chance to do this in my particular group, but I think it would be great to do a solo and ensemble type event with your students where they could record and collaborate with their peers and do their ensemble pieces. You can provide background tracks too. If you have a piano accompaniment part, you can upload that and use that in the background, which is great. And then, you know, send them out to colleagues that you may have to provide feedback for your students, or if you want to provide the feedback, or even if you want to give the students a chance to provide feedback for each other. I think it would be really, really beneficial to do that. The other thing is, if you are in the situation where you have to do a virtual concert of some sort, I know a lot of people were left in those circumstances at the end of the school year last year, and we're kind of trying to figure out, you know, what's the best thing to do. And to put together a virtual ensemble takes numerous hours, but then to do it for multiple pieces is even more. And so instead of having a, you know, all virtual ensemble pieces, I would suggest maybe, you know, 1 or 2 virtual ensemble pieces, but then have a number of different smaller group pieces that you could do in this app, which would be a lot less work for you personally, but would still provide the students with plenty of playing opportunities, which would be great. As with every program, there are downsides to this app. The biggest being the cost of it. It's not super inexpensive at all. So there is that issue. But when I decided I wanted to use this app, I reached out to the people who own the app. I think it's Pick Play is the name of the company. And they actually provided me a 90-day free trial link for each one of my students to use. So I had 90 students in that particular class. So 90 students, they gave a 90-day free trial, which was fantastic and got us through the end of the school year. Not all of my students chose to use it, as probably yours won't if it's an optional thing, but the ones who did were able to come up with some really creative videos, and I enjoy watching what they come up with on their own. So if you guys have any questions about this app that you need help with figuring stuff out on there, adjusting levels or anything like that, there's a lot of YouTube videos out there that can answer these questions, but I'm also happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I'm happy to help you reach the people who are in charge of the app if you're trying to get a classroom subscription or something along those lines. I did ask them about classroom subscriptions, and they do not have that set up at this point in time. But they said, you know, if anybody is interested in doing something like that, just to reach out to them. And I feel like that they are really willing to work with educators and providing this resource for your students. So I will have my contact information on a handout that'll be on the website. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks.
Thank you, Emily. We'll head on to MJ now, and she'll be able to share.
All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about Flipgrid. It's a fantastic resource. Teresa, do you want to introduce Flipgrid and what it is, and then I'll just talk about how I'm going to use it with beginning band students?
Sure, absolutely. So Flipgrid is a video response platform that essentially students or whoever can make videos, and they show up in a grid where the rest of the class or whoever it's being shared with can view. What's nice about Flipgrid though is it's what's considered a walled garden. You can only access it if you have a specific link or a specific code. So while your kids are making these videos and sharing them with their classmates, nobody outside of that can see it. And I think all three of us have used it in our classrooms in a lot of different ways.
Okay. I'm a middle school band director, so my biggest concern going into the fall is how I'm going to teach beginning band students without seeing them in person potentially, because our district still hasn't given us a final answer as to what it's going to look like. So I immediately thought of Flipgrid, and I'm going to share my screen and show you. I think I did it. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So these are the 4 grids that I have created so far looking into the fall, and I'm going to look at my 6th grade grid here. And basically, on Flipgrid, you can upload videos of yourself as well as like tutorials to show the students what is expected of them. And so I've just got some introductory things. I was thinking about what I do with my beginning band students before we even get instruments in their hands. And that's the easiest way for me to use Flipgrid right now. You know, we talk about the basics of entering and exiting the room and things like that, but posture and steady beat and pretty much that review of everything that they had learned in elementary school. So here's a grid where they can say hello. That's a pre-made grid that just pops up, or a topic that's pre-set up for you, and I leave that there so they can introduce themselves and learn how to use the program. And then I just broke down some things that we'll talk about before they even get instruments. So posture, and they can go on here and they can look up a tutorial that me and my 6-year-old son made on good versus bad posture. And my students, when I make videos from home, my students like to see what sort of chaos my home is in, because I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. So they're always like, what's Franklin and Eleanor going to do in your video? And my son loves to help. And then at that point, the students would be able to go in here and upload their own video of them demonstrating good posture and bad posture. Some other things that I did, the steady beat. And the fun thing is that you can add little, pictures and things over here that the kids will like. It's very much like social media in the way that you can add like tags and things like that. We did a video today on the steady beat, so my son got to show his lack of being able to find the steady beat to Moana today. And then the students would, what I did with this one was, I'll just show you.
MJ, there's not any sound right now.
There's not any sound coming through?
Sorry.
Okay, well, I'll just tell you, I just did a little definition of steady beat and then put on some music for Franklin, and he does interpretive dance. And then tell the students, you know, now go out, find a piece of music that's age appropriate and upload a video of you performing your steady beat in some, whether it's dance or just toe tapping or whatever. And then they get to upload it here. And I have all of my settings set up to where I'm the only one that can see the students' submissions, that nobody else can. Just, you know, my students aren't quite comfortable with that just yet. But here are some different videos just to show you, for those of you that are teaching beginning band in the fall, it's going to be fine. Here's a resource. It's going to be great. Now, stop share. And I think I did it correctly.
All right, then I believe I'm up next. And I'm kind of piggybacking off of what MJ said. So I teach beginning band. And initially, I started using Flipgrid a couple of years ago because I have very limited contact time with my students. And I found that I needed to figure out some way to connect with them in between their week lessons. And so when I found Flipgrid, I thought I would give it a try. And so they would come to their in-person lesson and I would assign them lines out of the book like I always had. And then there was always one that was the required line that they were going to record in Flipgrid. And the goal was for them to record it sometime, you know, in between their weekly lesson, and preferably not at 9 p.m. the night before their lesson, which sometimes did happen. But anyway, so then when I receive those videos, then I'm able to communicate back to the student or the parent, whatever the situation is, suggestions, you know. So, well, you're on the right track, now try this, or maybe, you know, wow, that was great, that was a great improvement. But I could have that extra contact with them. And then what ended up happening was it ended up being a huge time saver for me because I saw the video, I've already diagnosed the problem. So when now the student comes to their lesson and I have a short amount of time, I can go right to that problem and address it and try and fix it rather than trying to start off the lesson that way, you know. Or the student comes in and clearly has practiced. Wow, that's awesome. You've really improved on that. So now we can go immediately on to the next concept. So that was really, really helpful for me, that and an added benefit I really wasn't even expecting. What I'm really excited about going forward into next year is right at the end of this past school year, Flipgrid came out with the screen recording option, which now what will happen, my thought is I'm having my students sign up for Smart Music, and they will have the Smart Music tab in their computer, and then using Flipgrid and the screen record, they will be able to follow along and use all the assessment features of Smart Music, just like we know how they do that. And then also then in Flipgrid, once they're logged in, they can do a screen record. So they are listening and doing the Smart Music process. I'm seeing their picture in the bottom corner. So now I can assess their posture, their embouchure, their hand position. And again, especially if we're remote at the beginning and we have, you know, they're just learning this, diagnosing those problems right at the beginning because they form such bad habits so quickly. So I think it'll be a huge positive, and it'll really help for the student's success. And I do have and I'm sure all of you know what I'm already talking about with that. So this is just a screen share. So you can see I have the Smart Music up and there's a picture of me in the bottom corner. So you can see the assessment of the student. Most of the time, especially beginners, you don't need that, but great for the students. And then I can see their posture. And if you want them to focus on something like they have puffy cheeks, you can have them focus on, you know, their face or their torso where their hands are. And the other thing that I found to be really, really useful, let's see, that's my other, so I'll stop share. The other really thing that was useful when we got out in March was right before we got out, I handed out a brand new concert piece. And of course there were new concepts and new notes in it. And so what I did was this is a great thing with Flipgrid, is that you can upload a picture or a sticker. So I took a clarinet fingering chart and I circled the notes, the new notes, and then you can upload this. And so I would then send this to the students and say, okay, so these are your new notes in this section of music. And so you need to familiarize yourself with these notes and then implement it into the song. Because I know, one, some of the students wouldn't bother looking up the notes, they would guess. Or two, they would look up the wrong note. They would look up G sharp instead of G. And obviously I would do this differently if we're in person. I wouldn't do this. I would have the kids problem solve on finding the notes. But in remote times, you have to adapt your teaching and do what will help the students be successful. And I really feel this has been a big help, and I look forward to using it this fall to help my students even more, especially if we're remote. And I think this could be beneficial for any grade level that teaches band and really any subject. So you can really implement, and there's just a ton of different features in it that we won't be able to get to today. So I hope you try it out for the success of your students.
Awesome. So in the handout, there are a whole bunch of different links where you can see all of the different features. Because like Mary said, there's too many. I've done entire hour-long workshops just on Flipgrid, and I still don't get to everything. So, but the one thing that I do want to show you, so I'm going to also do a quick screen share, is the one Flipgrid that we set up for this conference. So if you went in the chat, the link is there. It's flipgrid.com/WBDI 2020, and that'll take you to the Flipgrid that we set up for this virtual summer conference. And in there, you will see there's a little video from all of the presenters. You can click on each video to watch. And up here where it says Meet the Presenters, if you click on that, you can go to some other topics. This is a great place for you just to experiment with Flipgrid on your own. You can introduce yourself to the other attendees, talk about what you learned, any kind of distance learning wins that you had. So it's a great way just for us to, again, build that sense of community. Because as I said before, that's my biggest concern with my kids, is that community. I mean, the music is very important too, but we want to be building that. So this is a great way for us in this conference to build our community. Other ways that I've used Flipgrid to help build community is the idea that you don't have to keep it within your own school. So sometimes I will have a Flipgrid that I share between my middle school students and the elementary school kids who are coming up. My middle school kids will make videos for the elementary kids saying why band is so much fun and why they love it and why they should join band. We've done similar things with the middle school going up to the high school, the kids just making videos for each other to reach out and connect that way. I've done projects with schools in other states, other counties, you know, things like that, where these kids are connecting with others. I did a project a couple years ago, again, with my friend in Chicago, where my students made like beginning instrumental tutorials for her younger kids, like proper breathing, proper posture, and all of that. And just having the kids take the ownership of saying, well, you're teaching this to them, you better do it right. You know, they're going to really think through the process of how do I hold my clarinet and how do I set up the trumpet, and like things like that. So you can really have the kids connect to other kids, and that ownership piece comes back again. So if you haven't already checked out our Flipgrid, make sure that you do and just experiment. It's a safe place. We're the only ones who are going to see it, but it's a great place to try it out.
Thank you so much, Teresa, MJ, and Mary, for your presentation there on Flipgrid. Next, we'll be heading over to Lauren Reynolds, and she'll be talking about the virtual ensemble through Final Cut Pro.
Thank you. So happy to be here. And Courtney, I don't know if there's going to be a chance for us all to thank you for the unbelievable amount of work that you've done in making these 2 days happen. I can't imagine, like, I don't know. I feel like it's probably stressful sitting there trying to navigate and juggle all of this in your home with your kids running around and all that. So thank you. So I don't know how I got stuck with the big elephant here. I guess because I made a couple of videos, the big elephant in the room, of course, being the virtual ensembles. But here we are, we're doing this thing. So I'm going to share my screen here, and the sound should be shared as well. All right. So what I'm talking about here is actually using Final Cut Pro, but I will mention a little bit about iMovie, and I'm happy to talk about that also, like after. We're the only things between you guys and happy hour right now. So happy to talk about that then. All right. So first thing that I really want to stress is that you need to make sure that you don't feel pressured to do this sort of project. And I think that's been a common thing as I've talked to friends and colleagues around the country. Like, and I mean, in my own situation, I got so many emails like, hey, check this out. And then they send me some amazing, highly produced video. They're like, can you do one of these things? And I'm thinking, you have no idea, right? And I know that many of you probably feel exactly the same way. So please try to avoid the pressure of doing this. It's really easy for someone like administrator or a parent or someone to suggest to you that you do this. I also want to point out to you that I am not at all a tech person. In fact, I get made fun of by my students all the time for being like a paper and pencil person. I'm just a band director, and I only got this skill sort of under my belt really recently, and I'm not an expert at all. And there are a lot of people in the world who are, and if you do a quick internet search, you'll find them. I also want to make sure that I stress that we all know that this is not at all a replacement or substitute for the ensemble experience, and that's really important to manage the expectations of all the various stakeholders in this if you're going to embark on one of these projects, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what this sort of project can do and what the outcomes actually are. What I've found is that these sorts of projects can be a fabulous pick-me-up and a way to like put a smile on people's faces, and also a great recruiting tool. So, but they definitely don't make a band. So first thing I want to talk about is before you start, all of the legwork has to be done. So planning is absolutely critical. You need to map out the project from start to finish before any communication goes out to the students. You need to know your timeline, and you need to build in like 7 times as much time as you think you will need. Lots of buffer time for every step of the way. If it's your 6th project like this that you're doing, then maybe you'll have a better idea. But if it's the first and only one you're going to do, you need to assume that it's going to take a long time. It's just like anything else in being a band director. If you're going to take a trip with your students, you got to build in all the extra time for the potty breaks and all that stuff. It's just like that times 1,000 because we're talking about technology. And also I would encourage you to enlist the help of anyone and everyone that's willing to help, you know, your colleagues, student leaders, whatever, but you also have to be really careful at the same time to avoid too many cooks in the kitchen. And I'll give you an example of that. I did a couple of these projects this semester. I did one like quartet type project with my college students, and then I did a full band thing with the wind ensemble. And then I did a full band thing with my youth wind ensemble. And then I did a project with my colleagues, faculty and staff in the School of Music that we produced for the students. And at that point, I was completely burnt out and really tired of doing this. And like anything, if you do something once and it's pretty decent, then everyone thinks you're really great at it and they throw it all your way. So I was just tired of being the go-to person for this. And I had a colleague who's a great audio engineer, in addition to being a trumpet professor, offer to do some of the audio. And I was so thrilled to let him do it. But if I had, you know, 80 people writing to me asking to help, I would probably have to narrow it down to just a couple. All right, so setting up the instructions, the only thing you really need to keep in mind at all times here is to be super clear and leave nothing up in the air. If you think it's obvious, it probably is not obvious. Someone is going to make a mistake on it, and even with the most clear, most detailed instructions, someone's still going to make a mistake, and that's also fine. But you're going to save yourself a ton of headaches the clearer you are. So I'm just going to open up a sample instruction sheet. Can someone just unmute and make sure that tell me yes, you can see this?
You're good.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the instruction sheet that I sent out to my students in the Youth Wind Ensemble, and I wanted to be ultra careful with them to make sure, because they all had varying levels of experience with this. I had no way of really being in touch. We didn't do any sort of Zooming or anything like that. We weren't synchronous ever. And so I just wanted to make sure I was ultra clear. So what I did was I put stuff into folders, like Google Drive folders, a part assignment sheet, the parts, the complete audio file that they play along with that had a click track, all the practice tracks. We exported one for each instrument, for each voice. And then I just hyperlinked to those, so there was no question. So just, you know, if you see the first one, here are the part assignments, click here. Okay, now download 3 things, these 3 things, click here, click here, click here, so that there was very little room for error. Gave them suggestions on how to practice. For example, don't assume anything, read your rhythms really carefully. Be sure you're playing exactly what the part says. I, of course, offered for students to get in touch with me, and we had a couple of kids took me up on it, had little one-on-one practice sections. You know, they were having trouble with a particular measure. Encourage them to practice with the audio. Talk to them about, you know, pulling up the file on a device and connecting your headphones, because some of them, you know, it's not intuitive to everyone. You don't think about that step of when you're recording a video, it's going to come through, you know, whatever you hear is going to come through on the video, and so on. You can read this over. This is all in the slides that are available to you. But I made sure to spell out things like how to position the device that you're recording yourself on, eliminating background noise, which orientation. That's a huge one. You can convert videos once they send them in from landscape to portrait or vice versa, but that's a real pain in the butt once you have 40 of them to work with. And then this part here is a really critical step that will help you a lot when you're lining up the videos, which is to have them speak something out loud at the same moment, like sort of like how people will snap or clap when they're recording something. So there were 4 clicks. So click, 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 music. And so what I instructed them to do was to say 3, click, click, 3, play, like that. And that way, when I'm lining up the videos and I see my little audio files, I can line them up and then just trim that off later. And that saves an unbelievable amount of time. Instructed them how to rename the file here after they create it, and then to upload it to a folder that, of course, I gave open editing access to, and so on. So let's see if I can go back here. Great. Is everyone seeing my slide? Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. I'm not going to show you the final video here. If we get a little bit of time later, or maybe in our happy hour time later, I can share that video with you. I actually made that video with those students on iMovie, which is impossible, and I'll talk about that more in a second. But we're going to talk about Final Cut Pro here. Detach and save your audio. Adam's going to talk all about audio in a moment. This is just a quick cheater way to detach audio, but I'm sure he's going to talk about that, and if not, we can answer that in the questions. Oops, I went too far. Okay, and then you got to put the project together, of course. So Final Cut Pro costs about $300, which is way better than what it used to cost. I don't remember what it was, but it was at least like $500 or $600, something like that. But personally, I'm not going to buy it. I did a free trial, and it was like 60 or 90 days, and that was plenty. I don't want to do more of these next fall, if I'm being honest. You know, if someone asks me to do it, I'll do it. But it was great for that period of time. So if you want to do one of these, you can just get the free trial, and there are no limitations. Quickly, before I show you, I made a little 5-minute tutorial on just the basics and introduction to the program. Just want to talk about the difference between this and iMovie. If you're an iMovie person, iMovie comes standard on all Macs these days. It looks almost identical, only there are fancier features here and there, but the major difference between them is that iMovie, when you do a picture-in-picture or a side-by-side, which is what people do when they're making these big multi-projects, you can only do one. So one layer, and then you have a picture-in-picture on that. And so in order to do the video, like the one I made with those kids, I had to export it and then import that in, sort of like Emily was talking with acapella, import it back in, and then add the next kid. Export it, wait for it to render, input it back in. And as you can imagine, that takes a ton of time. It takes a ton of memory. I had to keep deleting things off my computer so my poor little computer could handle it, because it was gasping for air. And also it means that things are static. So if I didn't oh man, I really want to move, Mac down there, I can't now, because Mac is static now. He's just a file that I brought in as a static, he's part of something that I can't adjust anymore. So that's the disadvantage in iMovie. As far as the effects and like fading in and out and all that, it's all the same. But in Final Cut Pro, you can do unlimited, like up to 99. So I'm going to show you this quick tutorial video. So we have created a new event here, file new event. I've already done that, called it WBDI. I'm going to import media. I can either click this little arrow here and go up to File, Import Media, or I can do the old drag and drop. I'm just going to do 2 videos now. I'm going to highlight them both and drag them and bring them over here. You, of course, again, can do this for up to, I think, 99 layers. So I thought it'd be a fun combination to do cello and steel pan. I can make a new project here. I'm gonna call this test. And I'm then going to bring down my first video, but just a drag and a drop, and my second video. Now I can clip this one if I want. I can go here and drag the front or the back of the video to trim it, but I'm not going to do that now because it's super easy to do it down here, and I don't know exactly where I would want to trim it anyway. So I'm going to bring Chris's video down here. Now it's really important to notice that I have left the audio in. Not sure why that's there. Left the audio in here because these little waves, the little sound waves, will help me immensely when I am trying to line up my videos. The alignment of the videos doesn't have to be perfect. The audio alignment does have to be perfect. This has to be really darn close to perfect because it'll matter for things like trombones or when a kid's fingers are showing, let's say on a clarinet or something like that, or percussionists. So it has to be really darn close to perfect, but not as exact as the audio. So I see there's a lot of dead time here before Chris starts playing. So I'm gonna click somewhere before there. And let's see, I'll click right around here. And the shortcut to split the clip is Apple or Command B. It's gonna split the clip, and then I'll just highlight this part and delete it. And that allows me then to move Chris around more freely. I'm going to zoom in with the old 2-finger expand that you use on a trackpad or on your iPhone or whatever. And I'm gonna line up their starting points. I can put my little marker here to help me line them up. And I'll get them pretty close. Let's see, might want to zoom in a little bit more. Move him a little bit more to the right. It's pretty close. All right, and then I just want to play them and see how they sound together. You can mess with the volumes if one is too loud and you can't really hear the other. You could bring it down just by dragging this little volume bar. All right, so I'm going to use my space bar to press play and check it out. And it sounds pretty darn good. Good enough for me. So I'm going to zoom back out so I can look at things more simply. All right, so there are my 2 clips. Okie dokie, so then the next thing that you have to do, which is really the only other thing to do, is to create a picture-in-picture. And again, I can do this with as many layers as is my fancy. Right now I'm gonna do it with 2. So I'm gonna click somewhere in the video. I cannot click in the gray area. I have to be somewhere where the video is actually playing. And make sure that it's highlighted in yellow like this. And I'm gonna use my transform tool over here. This is where I can transform and move my video around. And I can actually crop him or shift him or move him around however I want to do. I'll make him smaller and maybe I'll move him right here. Then I'm going to do the same thing for Larry. Maybe I will bring him, let's bring him down this way. Whoop, and shrink him up like that. And maybe I know how many people I have and I've decided where they're going to be spaced out. You can just mess around with it. You can also spin them around, wee, like that, or that way. It could be really fun. You just have to click on the video that you're actually wanting to transform like that. So there, I could make a beautiful video just like that, and it would look something like this. Like so. And that's really the gist of it. You do that times a million. Now, a lot of people have asked, like, how do you know how to line them up? It's simple math, and you can use the little aligning tools in here. Let me flatten him back out a little bit. So for example, I'll take him up here. He's still not flat. Okay, so I'm gonna take him up here and I'm gonna look for my X and Y axis up here. So if you look up at the very top, I can't point to it while I'm moving him around, but you see the X and Y position. And so the center of him, that little plus sign, the center of this video, if it were 0, 0, he'd be exactly in the center. So basically you can eyeball it, and if you know you have, let's say, 25 people, you could plan to do 5 by 5, and then you basically start with the center. So line up this person here, then do the next one, and so on, and work out from there. Or you can make an image of a grid and import that as one of your layers, so as an item of media. So here's an example of one I did for like a 40-person group. This one I actually did in iMovie, believe it or not, but I started this one with just me, and then my grid, and then I exported that and brought in each student on top of that and lay them on top of the grid. You never saw the grid, of course, because they were all covered by videos. So that's the gist of it. And you can play around with all of the awesome tools that are in Final Cut Pro. It's really easy to do that. And it's really easy to do like all the things that look so fancy and tricky, like the cutaways and, you know, suddenly someone is really big and featured, or a section of people. All of that is really easy, and you can play around with it to your heart's delight. But that's basically the gist of it. So again, search the internet and get the experts' advice, and they'll teach you all the cool tricks, but this is basically how you do it.
Thank you, Lauren. We can now move on to Adam, and you can talk a bit about the post-production side when you're dealing with the audio element.
Yeah, so I will jump right in. Let me share my screen. All right, so you should all be able to see that right now. So yeah, I'm gonna just briefly talk about the audio side of these virtual ensembles. We'll just get right into it. So first thing is you know, you can kind of do this two ways. You can mix your audio in the actual video processing thing, in the video processing program that you're using, or you can actually extract the audio from the video and bring it into some sort of software and mix that separately, and then sync all your videos to that. So one thing I like to use, and what I've been using recently, is Adobe Media Encoder. You can get this through the Creative Cloud program. You can get a license for it separately, or I think they might even have free trials just to use it. It looks something like this, similar to iMovie or Final Cut Pro. You can just drag and drop files into there, and you'll be able to make different settings. Like for these, I had them set so that the video files are being encoded to 24-bit 48 kilohertz mono audio files, and that's a little bit more technical jargon that you might be not used to. Another workaround for Mac operating systems, which I would assume most people have, is that you can right-click on the file, you can go to Services all the way at the bottom, and then select video files and do audio only. And that's a really quick, simple way. Dr. Reynolds actually showed me that a couple weeks ago, and I'm very happy she showed me that. Something I learned today is that you could actually use VLC Media Player, which is a type of media player like Windows Media Player or iTunes or QuickTime, and you can convert video files to just audio files in that program as well. So something else I want to talk about that's very important just to keep you centered and keep you sane while you're doing all this, because there's so many files you're working with, are the actual file organization. So while you're getting all your files organized, one of the biggest things to do is actually get them, get all the names in a type of, you know, naming scheme that's consistent throughout the entire project. So something like your instrument, your part, and your student name. So percussion, snare, Joe Schmo. You don't have to use the underscores. You can use dashes. You can use regular spaces as well. It's just kind of up to you in this matter. And also make one large project folder for each individual project you have, and then make subfolders in there, one for all your video files, one for all your separate audio files, and then your DAW or your digital audio workstation project folder, and then a separate folder just for the finished video. I'm just going to run through real quick a couple of DAWs that are available to use. Speaking on Adobe Media Encoder before, Adobe Audition is another program you can get a license for on a monthly or a yearly basis, and it is also can be found in Adobe Creative Suite. There's a couple ones that are free that I want to mention that are free to download and use on Mac and PC. GarageBand, most people are familiar with that already. It's free on. It's either already installed on your OS system or it's free in the App Store to download. Audacity, again, is also free to download for both Mac OS and PC. And then Reaper as well is another program similar to something like Ableton, Pro Tools, Cubase. This is kind of a larger scale program, but all of these, you'd be able to import all your audio files into them, line them up, mix them, and then bring that out into your video system to align everything together. So now that you've got your DAW of choice, you want to open it up in the correct folder and start going. Biggest thing again, make sure you name it correctly, because if you do have multiple songs, multiple ensembles, you want to make sure that you're keeping track of everything accordingly. Files can get mixed up really easily, and it's a real headache if you're not careful from the beginning. So when you import all of your audio files, they're going to be kind of like Lauren showed you, where everything's going to be kind of out of sync at first. So you want to actually get them organized, color code, make sure the names are all in order. This is kind of like an end product of what it might look like after you've gone through and edited everything. So I've got, this is a choir, for instance, but all the soprano voices are this green, altos are, this orange, and the tenors are this magenta down here. Color code by sections if you're able to. I like to use score order, just, as a musician, that's how I think as well. Now, here's the fun part. You can kind of take liberties you don't necessarily have in the classroom. For instance, like muting the really out of tune or offbeat students. Not everyone can hide in the ensembles, in these virtual ensembles. Everyone is extremely exposed because they have their own microphone and they're recording themselves separately. So feel free to, turn one student down if they're really not playing well, or maybe even just take them out altogether. That's really up to you. And when you're done lining up your tracks, use your ears to mix. You don't necessarily have to look too much at the waveforms once it's actually lined up. You guys are band directors. Band directors are already sound engineers. You guys just do this in real time without technology. So now you just have to implement a little bit of technology for the circumstances we're in right now. If you have any questions, here's my contact information and my website. On the handouts, there'll be a handout for you to actually click and view some other resources. I've got some links for tutorials for Reaper, Audacity, and GarageBand, as well as some other just useful stuff that might be there for you guys.
Thank you so much, Adam, and Lauren
Absolutely.
as well, related to this particular topic. We have a lot of questions and we're already 8 minutes, well, even beyond, into our little time here. But I don't mind maybe taking a little bit of time, if we can, just to try to address a couple things. Let's just, sorry, I'm trying to back on to where they are. Oh yeah, so Lauren, maybe this relates to you a little bit, but how do you handle it when other directors in your district are doing these kind of videos and the kind of competition? Did you feel that kind of backlash? I mean, obviously you did one. I didn't do any.
Yeah, I mean, I say be strong. Like, if you don't want to do one, don't do one. This is not a required part of being an ensemble member or being a band director. And as far as competition, like, I know that I am a band director and I am not a video editor. And so I can sleep at night knowing that, like, it would be weird if I made a video that was as high quality as one that Adam made, or whatever. Like, that's not right. I'm not prioritizing things correctly then, So I don't know, just
Understood.
It's silly.
Understood. Teresa, since you're the Google expert here, one person's talking about working through a private company and so dealing with the issues with Google. In terms of getting an account for the students, it's like once they get an account, are there easy video tutorials for people to use or for students to use as they get comfortable with the technology?
There's some stuff for students, but there's a lot for teachers. If you check out the Google Teacher Center, you can see tutorials for pretty much every G Suite product there is on how to use them, how to get started, how to get going with that. And for the kids, I mean, I think if you start small with just a couple little things, you can teach them as you go.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. I think we actually, because you guys were doing such a great job of also typing in answers. So for those who are watching, you can also look in the answer to the Q&A, and that will also be able to give you some information to see how those answers were. But also we can move over into the meeting format, and we'll be able to, if you want to continue conversations there, we can certainly do that. And I did include that in the chat a bit up a ways, and everybody should be able to actually see the chat in this, including attendees, because that's how I set it up. So you can click that. We're going to be ending the webinar now, and we'll be heading over into a little happy hour time. So bring some libations, whatever form they may take, and let's just enjoy some fun. But I want to thank all of you who just took some time to teach us some really great information as to how to navigate this virtual teaching and this hybrid teaching, whatever the form is going to take. I'm really thankful for all of you to just give us this expertise. You really inspired me, and each one of you gave me some really great ideas that I can utilize in the future. So thank you all very, very much. Thank you all for attending as well.
Thanks, Courtney. Can we
We
also
will-
encourage you, go back to your Jamboard, put your bud. What's one new idea that you learned, and put it out there and tell us what you're going to try, and let's end it like feeling good about ourselves and excited for next year.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Teresa. Thank you, everybody.